Welcome to this week's live ASX strategy session. Thanks for joining me. Great having you with me for another show. Lots of interesting things to talk about today with an ongoing consolidation in the ASX, new all-time highs in the US, new all-time highs in gold, plus some interesting movements in some of the other commodities. We're going to get to that a little bit later on. And then also any stock codes you'd like me to have a look at, let's get them ready. We'll go through them in the second half of the show. Always interesting to look at the charts for the stocks that interest you. Of course, everything today, general commentary only, doesn't take your personal situation into account. Having been through that, let's get into this week's first chart. So starting off with the ASX 200. And well, the ASX 200, it's about to register its longest pullback since the April lows. And how much longer is this likely to last? And is a deeper pullback coming? I'm going to come back and talk a bit about that in a moment. And then over in the US, the S&P 500 has just hit an all-time high. But is there some trouble brewing below the surface? I've got a chart you should see. I'll go through that with you a little bit later. But first of all, before we get to that, let's start with this latest price action in the ASX 200. So there hasn't been a great deal of movement this week, but I think the movement we have seen is generally positive. Prices continue to find support around the 50-day moving average, and then beneath there we have the 100-day moving average. Whenever there's been a down day, the market's been quite quick to rally back after that. So there has been that tendency for the buying of the dip to come in, and this is that classic bull market price action where we're looking at an earlier period. Prices run up, they pull back and consolidate, and then they often run higher again. And I think the odds favour that sequencing continuing here, but I think be ready for some more consolidation first. We've spoken about the potential for a longer consolidation over the last few weeks, and I think that's still the case. So yes, it's encouraging that the dip appears to be being bought, but until we see some signs of momentum off the lows, and that could be, for example, consecutive strong up days, so some real concerted buying, pushing things off the lows. Until we see that, I suspect this is going to take more time. The pullback from the August high, or August's all-time high, it's about 1 day short of becoming the largest consolidation since the low in April. And the previous mark was this period here during June and July, where prices just tracked sideways for a month and a half or so. And I think the latest consolidation, this consolidation we're getting now, I think it's constructive, and big moves need proportional consolidations, and because this certainly has been a big move, and without those regular pauses, a trend can become unsustainable, and that's when things can come apart. I think it's the pauses along the way, like we're potentially seeing now, that create the new support zones, and then these often become the platforms for higher levels in the weeks and months ahead. Speaking of support, a level I think which is worth watching is around 8,600. It's where this blue horizontal is. I'm just going to stretch this out so it comes up underneath the current price action. And so what's important about this, it takes in two previous highs. You can see these highs from Feb 25 or February this year, and then also in June. And it also acted as a base during this consolidation during July. And another thing is it coincides with the 100-day moving average. I think this is an important region. Whilst it holds, what we're seeing so far, it remains a relatively shallow consolidation, which of course is good. Shallow consolidations are good because it shows there's buying interest just beneath the market. And I think we could see this consolidation then potentially pass through within a couple of months from the high. So there's a high, and it could be another few weeks, and then maybe that passes through, and we could see the resumption of momentum. But I think if prices were to break below this support, then that would probably then suggest that a longer and deeper pullback is in order. That's not the situation at the moment, but I think there's a clear level where the nature of the consolidation potentially changes. So just a level to be aware of. You may remember we spoke about the weekly RSI in last week's strategy session. If you haven't seen it, just go back and have a look at that. But just in brief, let's just put an RSI, a relative strength index, on this chart, and let's jump to a weekly. And the point that I was making last week was that when the RSI gets to an extreme, so it gets above 70, so you can see 70 being the upper marker. When it gets to one of these extreme points and reverses, it typically comes back to midway, which is 50 or below. And we've seen this happen a number of times. You can go back further. We won't do that today. Did that last week. And we've recently been in an extreme, and we're currently pulling back, and actually, like just this week, it's inched lower again. So it's more than halfway back from 70 back to 50. It's more than halfway back at the moment, and I think this is another reason why I think this consolidation could have a bit further to go. So if the RSI continues to make its way back to 50 over the next few weeks, we could continue to see the ASX 200 track sideways to even a touch lower. Quickly looking at the equal weight index whilst we're on the ASX, let me jump over to the equal weight, and we'll bring this back to a daily chart. So coming over to the equal weight, it continues to outperform the ASX 200, and it remains above its 50-day moving average. There's a 50-day moving average, still comfortably above there, and you can see it even hit a new all-time high earlier this week. But just look at the RSI. Since we've got the RSI on here, it's interesting to have a look at this as well. So there's some significant divergence which is going on. So you can see prices continue to make new highs, but the RSI is not confirming with highs of its own. Don't be surprised if the equal weight pulls back towards its 50-day moving average over the next few weeks. The RSI is often a warning sign that a market is not necessarily going to reverse, but potentially going to pause and do some work. We could see that happen in the equal weight. And this, of course, would then align with what I've been discussing with the ASX 200 and the potential for several more weeks of consolidation. But overall, I think the equal weight, it shows that the broader market continues to hold up well. And as we often discuss, a strong broader market is a key factor in sustainable bull markets. Also interesting is that while the equal weight has been doing better than the ASX 200, the small ordinaries has been doing better than the equal weight, and then the emerging companies index has been doing better than the small ordinaries. So I'll discuss the smaller end of the market in a few minutes. It really is interesting what's going on there. Just coming back to the ASX 200 briefly, I'm viewing this at this point as a pause within an ongoing upward trend. There are signs we could be in for more consolidation as we've been through, but the underlying trend remains up. We've still got these rising moving averages. For me, that means staying positioned for a bullish trend, but as always, having that exit strategy in mind for when conditions do at some point change. And for me, that means using those wide trailing stops. Okay, so we're going to jump over to the US markets now. Then we've got the local stocks, the small caps, the commodities to go through. But if you're getting some value from this, please hit that like button. Please leave a short comment. Just thanks for the video, or tell me whether you think we're in for a longer consolidation or something else. And those things help me a lot. It shows YouTube that you're interested, and YouTube shows other people, and that makes this whole thing works. People watching what I do. So yeah, please do those things. It helps a lot. All right, so let's go to the S&P 500. And this week, the S&P 500 hit its 28th all-time high for the year, and then that was quickly followed by a pullback over the last few days. At this stage, I'm viewing this as a pause within a bullish trend. Nothing here stands out as being a warning of an impending trend change. Just looking at the underlying structure, the key factors I'm looking at are the rising moving averages. So the 50-day and the 100-day moving averages continue to rise. Price, of course, is above those moving averages. So they're all bullish markers, and we've also got that clear series of rising lows, rising highs. As I mentioned, at this stage, the pullback appears to be a pullback, and it's similar to what we saw during June, during August, and during earlier in September. We've seen this sort of price action several times over the last few months. At this point, it looks similar. People often worry when prices are at historic highs, like they have the whole way up. People worry about the market when it's at historic highs. They tend to think that that a top must be likely sometime soon, and that an all-time high is close to the end. But the thing is that all-time highs they're often not final highs. They often lead to more all-time highs. And when we consider the factors that I just went through, that being like the rising moving averages and price above the averages and sequence of rising lows, etc. When we look at that, I think the odds favour new all-time highs later in the year. But of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't expect. We shouldn't. And of course, that also doesn't mean we should be expecting all-time highs every week, is what I meant to say. And the potential for a multi-week consolidation, I think when we look at this, I think that potential is very much there. Like this has been a big rally off that April low, and the pullbacks so far they've been short and they've been shallow, and quickly moved to new highs. At some point, we're going to get a longer consolidation. I also want to show you what's been going on in the equal weight. That's interesting on its own. So just coming over to the S&P 500 equal weight. So after trading sideways for much of September, it's quickly come back to the 50-day moving average. And of course, below there's a 100-day moving average. And it also broke lower from this sideways consolidation, this tight consolidation that's been in for much of September. I don't think this damages the overall trend, but I think it is a sign that the broader market isn't ready to move higher. The fact that it's consolidated and now it's broken to the downside from that consolidation. There's also some important price action to discuss in the Russell 2000, which is the small caps. I'll get to that in a moment. But look, first of all, a retest of the 50-day moving average. I think the first thing to remember is that these are normal events within an uptrend, and we've seen these before, and often they resolve in higher prices. Like you can just look back here to these instances back in 2024, retesting the 50-day moving average. It's normal within an upward cycle. I think that's probably what we're seeing happen now. But until we see the equal weight at new highs, so we can see it like rebound off these moving averages and get to hit new highs, I think US stocks are generally in for more consolidation, at least over the near term. Just bringing this back to the S&P 500 quickly. As I said with the ASX 200, it's the underlying trend. The underlying trend that determines my positioning. As it stands, the trend is upwards until I have good reason to do otherwise. Well, I want to stay with this trend for as long as possible. And that means wide trailing stops, try and sit through consolidations and yeah, as I say, stay with the trend. Okay, so we're going to jump over to the US small caps now. Then we've got the Aussie small caps to go through, the commodities. I've got a couple of stocks that I bought this week that I want to tell you about. I'll do that in a few minutes as well. But of course, that wraps up the free section. If you're not a strategy session member, there's a link below. Click that. Come on board. Doesn't cost you very much. Whole lot of stuff you're going to get for your small investment. And you'll get today's full replay. Plus, you're welcome to join the live session next week and ask about your own stocks that you're interested in. All right, let's jump to the Russell first, and here we go. The Russell 2000.